Welcome to the webinar titled The Power of Image Optimization in Branding and Storytelling. We have a great session mapped out for you all, together with our technology partner, Elpical. My name is Magdalena, and I'm the Product Marketing Manager with WoodWing, and I will be moderating this conversation today. If we go to the next slide, I would like to introduce the main speakers who will be joining us. We have Tom Peisel, who is a Senior Product Manager at WoodWing, and we welcome Derek Milne, who is the Sales and Marketing Manager at Elpical. But to begin, let's cover some general housekeeping rules, and then we will run through the agenda. So we will start with two brief introductions, one for WoodWing and the other is for Elpical and their solution Claro. We will then move on to a discussion-led part where we will focus on the benefits of image optimization as well as the impact of AI technologies within the subject. Our speakers will then show a creative example with a use case focusing on the creation on a print catalog where image optimization is crucial. All attendees are currently on mute, so please feel free to use the question box on your right to submit any questions that you might have throughout the session. And we promise that we have spared a few minutes at the end to try to answer them all. Well, we have a lot to cover, so let's get started. Tom, will you do me the honors to start your introduction part about WoodWing?
Thank you, Magdalena. Let me give you a small introduction to WoodWing. So we were founded in 2000, and we help over 800 customers to solve their content spaghetti. And we have a daily number of users of around 50,000. We do this together with our partner community. So we have over 60 resellers worldwide and are active in more than 60 countries. So the creation of content is very complex, and more than often it feels like a content spaghetti instead of an organized process. And there are many aspects that contribute to this spaghetti, but the most important ones are the content itself. So you create exceptionally beautiful and meaningful content. So this is not only touch design, but also the text, for example. Think of verticals like magazine publishing, marketing, financial content, educational content, news, or product-related content. Secondly, the number of distribution channels. So our users need to tell stories via print, digital channels, published towards apps. And they need to do this in an efficient way while respecting and taking advantage of the uniqueness of each of the channels. Next, the scale and velocity are an important ingredient. Think, for example, of the velocity of producing a newspaper or producing content in multiple languages or managing a content library containing millions of product images. And lastly, maybe the most important ingredient is people. So high quality content is never created in a vacuum. It requires teamwork and efficient collaboration. And the solution to this problem is content orchestration. So by implementing a content orchestration strategy, the content spaghetti can be unraveled, and this leads to a quicker time to market, higher efficiency, brand consistency, and the reduction of costs. And so we help our customers using two of our products to implement an efficient content orchestration strategy. The first one is WoodWing Assets. So this is a digital asset management system, and it's the home to all your assets. Secondly, we have WoodWing Studio, which is a multi-channel content creation platform. It allows you to plan, produce, publish and repurpose content for both digital and print channels. And with that, I would like to give the floor to Derek.
Thanks, Tom. Good morning, everybody. And as Tom was saying, Magdalena was saying, just a little overview in terms of Elcam, who we are. So, Tom, if you can move on to the next slide. The Elpical itself has been around since 1997. We formed out of an MBO from Victor Hasselblad's software dev team. So we have a huge and really impressive legacy in terms of the people that know about images. And that's all we've really focused on since then. It's really been about the development and how we can enhance images, taking the latest technology and applying that to image optimization. And as we'll see shortly, image optimization really is quite a broad spectrum now of what it applies to. It's not just about the quality of the images. With the next slide, you will see that this is how Claro really works. It takes each individual image, breaks it out to core components, as you'll see, and then tones each of those images separately depending on what it finds. Now, at the moment, this is all done internally. There's no AI applied to this particular part here, but we'll see shortly just what AI can do to this particular process. So skin tones, blues, the skies, the vegetation, pretty much the whole range of elements within the image can be toned separately. So you get a very specific toning result of the images for your own requirements, whether it be for the web or for press, etc., etc. Now, what comes with Claro in terms of the way that it operates? It really is a great product in terms of how it works. It can work either as a standalone or, as we see with WoodWing this morning. It's awesome in terms of how it works when it's plugged in and becomes more of a service to the application itself. So it is kind of ready. We have instances up in AWS, Azure, etc., etc. There's 4 toning engines within the application itself, so it's a huge throughput, especially for high capacity requirements as such. And it doesn't have to be completely automated. There are options for semi-automatic approaches too, again, which we'll see later on. As you'll go through, or as we're going through, you'll see some of the images. These are the before and afters, obviously, just to kind of showcase some of the abilities of what Claro can produce. Now, with the advancement of AI and the latest version of Claro, we've really embraced this technology in terms of just looking at what we can pull in to add in layered options within that Claro itself. Automated cutouts are huge. I used to spend hours doing cutouts of cars, and it's just so mundane. Now, very, very easy, very straightforward to do, and all done within seconds. This was a great example. Lots of noise in the background, and again, a very quick cutout at that point, and highly accurate too. Perfect for then just placing on the page and then kind of moving on. So the creatives really kind of focus on what they do best, and that's the creative side of things too. And then with the next slide, just really kind of showcasing what we can do with some of that intelligence. So it identifies a face. That's all very well and good, but it then generates some metadata, which we can then action upon for the toning too. So we know there's a face, there's a skin tone, there's a woman within this image. Each of those trigger points can then spur on further toning options. So overall, it just makes the final product super accurate in terms of what can be done with it. But also just across the board, this happens to each and every image going through. So as a branding approach or as a storytelling approach, you know you're going to get a standardized image coming through from it. And then the very last one is just, again, some kind of ideas in terms of what we can do with that image information. Why not have multiple images created already ahead of time, different aspect ratios, thumbnails, etc., all based on some of this business intelligence that's already applied to the image. So as you'll see from our next few points of discussion in the demo, there really is a lot more than just making the image look better, and now for image optimization with Claro. So thank you for that. It's a very brief overview in terms of what Claro can do and where Elpical comes from. What I should just add into the very end point of this is Elpical, similarly to WoodWing, we operate in 59 countries, powering a lot of the largest publishers, newspapers, magazines, and retailers across the globe. And it's an honor to be able to share this with you.
Thank you so much, Derek, for this brief introduction of both Elpical and Claro, and thank you, Tom, for the introduction about WoodWing. Now we're moving on to the topic where we would like to deep dive the benefits of image optimization. And here I would like to start by asking my colleague Tom to briefly explain the 3 different types of workflows to optimize your images. Tom?
Yes, thank you. Basically, traditionally we see 2 workflows. One is an in-house workflow where you have in-house designers that do the retouching and create the cutouts, for example. You can do this great within both Assets and Studio using a status-based workflow, for example. But there are many repetitive steps, so your team really has to do a lot of the same task over and over again. So on average, we see times to 5 to 30 minutes spent on an image, depending on the requirements, of course. And but since it's in-house, it's a relatively quick turnaround time. The second workflow that we see often is an offshoring workflow, where you, for example, during the day, you select the images that you would like to have retouched. You change the status, and that triggers automation that would automatically transfer the files to an offshore location, for example, in India or Malaysia. The team then over there would do the retouching, and then the images flow back into your system the day after. So there is a disconnecting workflow and some delay, but overall this is also an efficient workflow. Outsourcing images can vary from $1 to $20 per image, or $150 per hour, also depending on the services of that company. Derek, could you maybe explain a bit about the advantages of having an integrated workflow?
Absolutely, thanks, Tom. So, as Tom was saying, there's some nice kind of captions with the in-house and the offshoring options for toning and optimizing images. Now, where Claro comes in and where Elpical comes in, and certainly when it works with when it's integrated in with WoodWing, the images are near instant in terms of being ready to use. It's an interesting conversation to have, and this is for another time, whether you pre-tone or tone on the fly, as it were, depending on how the setup and the workflow is. But within seconds, the images are ready to go. Multiple different types of sizes of images, so you can run a 5-column width one, 2-column width. You can run ones for digital, RGB, etc., etc. So everything is very, very fast and ready to go. So yes, you create multiple variants, but they're all toned to the same kind of to the same standardization. So no matter which one you end up using, it's all the same. All the operations are carried out within the existing workflow. So it's a very short kind of sentence, but it means an awful lot in terms of there is no real learning curve for anybody to use it. It's all done with the existing environment. So this makes for a very, very straightforward, very easy approach to creating content and using these toned images, which is for just throughput capabilities. Not having an external step is very much more quicker, should I say. Now, in terms of the actual toning and everything else, that goes without saying, and again, we'll see some examples later. But everything is dark images are bright and bright images are darkened down. There's more data and details put into the shadow and the highlight areas for that. So there's a lot going on with this in the background that is all controlled. And this is kind of probably one of the key points and key benefits is everything is in a controlled environment. There's not individuals toning images. One has likes more of a warmer image, another one likes a cooler image, and so forth. So there's a lot of control, standardization. But then, of course, the great part about it is you then add in the layered services of the AI opportunities. So with image understanding, so the metadata, auto metadata generation, it's known exactly what is in that image. So we know that the previous image for the girl with the lady with a hat in the desert, we know all that information already ahead of time, and that can be used outside of just the toning process. And finally, the last point for this, and it was really difficult to try and get this down to 5 points, but the final one being the automated scaling and sampling. This is hugely important now. We're not just obviously with the omni-channel process, we're looking at all different types of output requirements, different sizes and so forth. And that is all done, again, it's all part of that integration, it's all part of the WoodWing approach, and it's all done more or less instantaneously too. So there's no more needing to send it back out again for converting to RGB or to 72 DPI. So it's a very nice kind of operation. It takes a lot of the guesswork out, a lot of the steps that would normally add in a reasonable amount of time to that processing to then turn that product around a lot quicker. So it's in essence capturing this in probably 1 or 2 words. It's just really, it's about the time saving, about the ability to get the product to market much quicker, and also the control throughout the whole image requirements.
Great. And just a brief question for you both. Can you combine any of these workflows? What does the practice say?
Yes, that's absolutely possible. So using Claro, you can, for example, optimize all the images that you use in production. But if you need to do specific cutouts or a special task to be performed on the image, you can still use the status-based routing or within the Studio system to combine these efforts, and that this variant of the image is then also saved next to all the automatically generated variations of this image, and we will see that in a bit.
Yep, absolutely. That's I can't really add much more to that. Really, I mean, yes, is the answer to the question. It's both integrated or outside as well, external.
Okay, and I suppose we should move on to the next slide, where you both can also share your opinion on the top benefits of image optimization. Tom, could you start?
Yeah, I think for me personally, time is a very important aspect, so that you don't have any cuts within your production process, so that you have a nice even workflow, and don't have to wait for a day before the images come back. You can immediately see the results. Am I happy with this, with my design, and can then send it off for approval.
Yeah, and it's funny from my aspect. Obviously, we both look at the same thing, but we have a different kind of approach. For me, it's more about the quality and the standardization of the images throughout that particular process. So the more attractive the image, the better the story is engaged with the readers and so forth. But also from the corporate or organizational standpoint, you have a known output for these images, so you know really what the type of images are going to be, how they're going to be toned, and the great results you can get with them. The other one, the specificity, which is always a bit of a mouthful, really is, as again we were just talking earlier about how we're getting involved now with the omni-channel, and it really is a case of, okay, it's great for print, but it's also, we have to look now at image SEO requirements for websites, for digital products too. So it really is about tailoring the particular images and how we automate that for all these different operational requirements. And image SEO is really just becoming more and more, for us personally, we're seeing a lot more interest in that now.
Yeah, and also an important aspect of digital images is the size of the images, and that's even for print. That can be an issue. So let's say you have a very nice product shot that has a super high resolution that you can place on the billboard. Yeah, if you use that on a print page, it requires a lot of time to download it. It's costing time. But also, if you push it to a digital channel, you don't want to have this super high res image. You really want to have it optimized for that digital channel.
Yeah. And I think overall, one of the things, and I know we've talked about this before, Tom, we have a joint customer in Asia, and they have both products. And what they've found now with the optimization of the images is they free up a lot more time for the creatives to actually do their creative work. So the mundane kind of toning options of the images is all automated. But what the net result of it has been is that the overall quality of their products has just gone through the roof. They can spend much more time on these images, on the highly critical images, the front cover shots and so forth. So the creatives get to hone their skill set even more, but the end result is just a beautiful looking product, which they could never achieve before because they were spending so much time on this rudimentary, the regular kind of processes of images. So it's a very, it's a soft benefit really, because it's very difficult to then make that into tangible numbers. But they've seen improvement in advertising ratios in terms of people now want to advertise more with them because the product is so good. It just conjures up more time to do great stuff with the images and the product itself.
Yeah, overall you see a huge increase in quality and brand consistency.
Yeah, which is, I mean, for both of us, that's kind of really what we want from the product and from the use of it. Overall, it's really about just generating that great looking product and making it easy to do so, of course.
So that covers kind of the branding part and all the benefits that organizations could yield. But I'm also interested if we could cover something a bit more interesting, and that's next slide, which is the impact of AI technologies. Now, before we start with this topic, I'd like to point out that this is all currently available technology within the solutions provided by both WoodWing and Elpical. So to start off with, what does, for Derek, a question for Derek, what does AI mean for image optimization? And could you please share some benefits of AI?
Sure. This was probably the hardest part to prepare for the presentation, because it's so large. There's so many different options available with it now, and kind of how it impacts different parts of the organization. We have the 4 benefits up on the screen at the moment, and that covers a good amount, but there's an awful lot more too, which is for a conversation for another time. But personally, from the Elpical Claro standpoint, all 4 are really super important in terms of how they're used. Image quality is really interesting with AI. There's a couple of options that we use with that. And again, it plugs in really nicely. Both WoodWing and Elpical use some of the same engines for this. But with image quality, and we saw a little bit earlier with some of the slides then, it starts to understand what is in the image. So the benefit of that really is huge. So we get a report back in terms of, okay, we know that there is there's a lady in the desert, there is a deer stood on the hills, etc., and we'll see these later. But basically what it means for us, and in terms of toning, is that we can now be super specific with what we do with that toning. So we know from the keywords, we know that the skin tone involved with the lady with the hat. So we can start to be super accurate with the skin toning. Not that we're not accurate already, but it just adds an additional layer of polish to the image itself. And if you think of images that have maybe multi-ethnical people within, or diverse range of skin tones within those images, each one is then toned specifically for that, because, hey, we know there's a face and we can gauge all the skin tones from that. So a huge benefit overall for the image quality for that. And then conversely, from that point, because we know that information, there's no point in running skin tone analysis on an image that doesn't have skin tone. So you start to get faster, more accurate processing of all these hundreds and thousands of images that process through on a daily or weekly basis. So that part is kind of really scratching the surface. There's some fascinating research out there to read if you get into it. You can tell I'm kind of, I love this stuff. It's really interesting. So I'll stop just there. But the next one, content enrichment, again, leads back to, okay, this is now image optimization in a much broader spectrum. It's not just about making those images look fantastic, look sharp and punchy on the screen or on press. It's now about what information do we add to that image that can be used either for the toning, for the product, or even outside of that within the organization too. So there's a lot more information that can be generated from that use of AI for that. And accuracy, we'll see with the cutouts shortly. It's just phenomenal. This cutout operations, Typically will take maybe 10 to 20 seconds to do a really complex cutout. Amazing. It's probably quicker, but you know, just to be on the safe side, we'll say 20 seconds per image. And it is super accurate. It's delivered on a layered PDF or layered TIFF, sorry, a layered PSD file or layered TIFF, or even as a PNG file for the web use. So it's all supplied within seconds and in the background, so that everybody really kind of just gets on and works focused on the content production, not on the image toning itself. So that's the huge part. And then of course, then that pushes back into the time and cost saving. If we're looking at a complex cutout, that can be anything from 5 to 30 minutes, maybe even longer. The cost for that in terms of either you do it internally or you send it out, there's so many different variables that come into it. And as we'll see later on when Tom goes through with the product layout side of things, this is all done for our examples at least ahead of time, so you're not even waiting for a few seconds for the cutout to be there. It's ready and good to go.
Perfect, thank you. Tom, can you probably elaborate on any other use cases that you see and you have encountered with where there's the major usage of AI also with on the WoodWing side?
Yeah, and one of the most important parts is in your selection and gathering and uploading of content within your digital asset management system. So the content in your system, so you want to find this. So if you have millions of images, you want to find the images that you actually need. And in order to do that, you need to describe these images. So traditionally, you manually needed to add all kinds of tags and metadata to describe the image. Now with AI and you can basically send off the image to an AI provider, and these tags are then automatically generated. And so on the one hand, you can use them to search on those terms, but things that we're looking into is if we even can suggest images based on the content that you are creating, and that's also AI powered, so that you really find those images that relate best to your content. And the nice thing with AI, it's not one tool that you can use, and you can really look in the market and see, okay, what AI technology fits best for me, which provider fits best for my type of content, and then integrate that with your WoodWing Assets system. Next to that, and I will also show you that in a bit, is that AI can also help you in the production process. For example, when you place an image on a layout, it can automatically fit that image within the frame. It saves you a couple of seconds, but if you do this numerous times a day, it saves you a lot of time.
Exactly. And what is the best of breed approach? Can you elaborate more on that, according to you?
Yeah, so the best of breed approach is the advancements in AI go very fast. So look for a provider or a solution that is capable of integrating multiple AI providers, and when a new AI technology comes around the corner, that you can quickly integrate it within your content orchestration strategy.
Okay, and a question for probably both. What does AI bring to production operations?
Tom, do you want to go first?
Yeah, it's really about removing those mundane tasks, so that you can really focus on the creative parts of producing the content, and all those more or less boring tasks like describing an image, so that the metadata tagging or doing cutouts over and over again. Those are the tasks that you can automate, and then you free up time to be really creative and then work on exceptionally beautiful content.
Perfect, thank you.
Absolutely, and I think from our standpoint too, with looking at those images and just kind of how we can then bring that and assist with the production operations in terms of the types of image that we talk about. So the mechanics of the image too. So we're not just talking about, does it look good? Is it a certain resolution? But is it the right file type? Is it going to be the appropriate size for what it's going to be used for? And again, this is all, it's all done in the background, but it adds so much time, or reduces the time it's taken to produce the final document. But also outside of that, when we look at for use of the digital products and also the websites, we're optimizing the images for the use on the website, which is hugely important when we start to look at image SEO reports and requirements for websites. It just in itself, that's a whole nother topic really for image optimization. So it really does cater for a large spectrum of the individual requirements, but all under a single umbrella.
Thank you. Now, I suppose we can wrap up this whole AI subject, because it's very interesting and we can go in details as much as we'd like to. But I would suggest that maybe we move forward if you have shared everything that you would like to share, and go off to the next creative example where you can showcase the image optimization integration with WoodWing solution and Elpical in action.
Yes, let's do that. So in this example that we would like to show you, we are producing a flyer for a supermarket. So this is WoodWing Studio, which gives you direct access to all the material that you're currently working on. And move the panel out of the way. So let me first show you how you would traditionally do a cutout, for example. So normally what you would do is you would change the status, for example, of this image to retouch, and then automatically you see that it is sent to the retouching department, and then I would have to wait until that's finished. But we're not going to do that, so we go straight into the layout, and then, for example, we can place this this broccoli image onto the page. And so this broccoli image has already been cut out before using Claro. But what I would like to show you is a nice feature within InDesign, which is called Content Aware Fit. It is also AI powered, and this automatically fits the image within the page. But let's take a step back and let's see where this image came from. And for that, we go to WoodWing Assets. So this is the digital asset management system. And in here, we created a folder structure where with product images. And here we see, for example, all the, we would have all the originals, all the print optimized images, and the web versions of those images. So you see here that we have one image. So this is the original. And this is the cutout which has been created by Claro. So if I'm a designer and I need to have a broccoli image for print, I can just go to the print folder, search for broccoli, and then automatically get an image that's optimized for print. So here you see the images side by side. I don't know if you would like to add something, Derek.
It's always difficult to see on the screens like this, just some of the differences when it's being broadcast. But I mean, this is a relatively straightforward cutout operation. Broccoli is always a bit of a challenge because of the little bits of it, but it's done a really nice, clean job on the image itself. This one, I think, if I remember correctly, took about 4 seconds, I think, to process and return back as a layered PSD file. So I think also for the website, you have also the cutout with the PNG option too. But obviously for print, we're going to do we'll work with the PSD for the time being. But yeah, just nice. Now with Claro itself, we can address some of the greens. If you like more of a greener broccoli, or more of a yellow-based green, or a cyan-based green, that can also be adjusted too. So lots of different options within that. But for now, this is just a very straightforward cutout and a slight tone to the image itself.
Yeah, we also have another example, which is a steak, and here you really see the effects of automatic toning.
This one is, and this is a great example. We kept it in line because it's the supermarket brochure, etc., or the flyer. But there's a couple of points just to kind of pull out and sort of showcase this. You'll see that some of the shadow areas, especially in the background of the image, have been opened up, but without blowing out the highlight dots. So Claro works on different tonal regions to generate some very, very accurate and intelligent toning results. But overall, if you're looking at the steak in the middle and you eat steak, it's a very it looks a nice piece of meat. The one on the left, it's a piece of steak, but it doesn't look quite as attractive as certainly the one on the right-hand side does.
Yeah, and our last example that we had was this deer.
Yep, this is a great example. I'm glad you brought this one up. This sort of showcases a lot of, I was trying to stay away from all the warm colors and the reds, and then just have something very different to what we're working with currently for the brochure, for the flyer. But you'll see there's a lot more detail in the shadow tone areas of the grasses. Now you can actually see what is in the vegetation that the deer is stood in. The deer is a lot clearer, it's a lot sharper on the image itself. The blue in the sky has been changed, and also the shadow in the background of the hills in the background has been opened up. It just overall makes a much punchier, much more delightful image to look at than the one on the left. The one, it's a great photo. The photographer did a really nice job with this. But Claire has just brought out some of those key elements to really make that image look more stunning and more kind of stand out on the page, which, when we consider the importance of images in terms of conversion rates on readerships and so forth, it really does what it's supposed to be doing and draws the eye to that. So it's a really nice result. That was all automatic, no Photoshop, no retouching. It was all done through Claro.
Great. And I think you might wonder, yes, now I have different variants of the image, but and this, if I now change the metadata of one of the images, I need to apply that metadata to multiple variants of that image. Actually, WoodWing Assets can help you with that. So you can have shared metadata fields. So if I change the metadata field on one of the images, it would automatically apply to the other images. So no additional work for working with variants. So we are happy with the broccoli story. Now we'd like to show you a background story. So as a designer, you do not have to search for the images. They are all accessible directly from the, for example, the dossier panel. So this ties into the stories that I just showed you. So let's first do this lady. Sure.
As Tom's just bringing this image in, this is a great example of the cutout capabilities. A lot of the product shots that you'll see on the brochure itself, the pasta boxes, they're really straightforward cutouts. It's nice square edges. You have this image, and it's a wonderful image. It kind of captures a lot of what Claro can do in a single image. But I really want to draw the attention to the cutout of the lady's hair. It's just phenomenal from what it was, and as a Photoshop operation, it would take forever. Well, maybe not forever, but it would take a good amount of time to go around and get such a highly accurate cutout to this. So again, it's yes, the quality of the image is much better than it was. but we're looking at the mechanics of it too, and we're looking at the cutout. So all of a sudden you now have this amazing looking cutout. The hair is not just being cropped around, losing some of the finer pieces. It really just captures the essence of the photograph itself. So it's when I saw this come through, it's just, it's wonderful. It's an amazing image to showcase the cutout capabilities.
And the last one that we would like to show is this one. So this is a couple shopping. It has quite a complex background, as you can see. And in this case, if you go to the object layer options here, we see the different layers of the image, and we can just remove the background here. And as a designer, you can just decide, okay, don't want to show the image with or without background. And with a simple click, the background is gone.
And again, this is it's a nice example, especially as it's the supermarket flyer. But just you can look in the background, and there's a multitude of different colors, different parts, and different components to the image that the cutout. Again, it wouldn't take as long as the previous lady, but it certainly would take a reasonable amount of time to go through, especially when you look at the shopping cart itself around the guy's hat and the lady's headdress. It really is quite a complex cutout, as far, well, a medium one, let's put it that way. It's not as difficult as the previous one, but it's not as easy as a carton or a product shop, that's for sure. So once the product is complete, Tom, you then wrap that up and then carry on with the other pages.
Yeah, so when you're done, you just close the layout. You send it off for review to another, to maybe your product manager. He can then sign it off, and it can be sent to the printer for to be printed and distributed.
Yep. So I mean that there is just the combination of the two is really just a huge. From the production process, it simplifies the process. The assets are already in place, and it just speeds that whole process through. It's a very slick operation in terms of removing a lot of the pain points or the points where it would just add in minutes or hours to the whole process. So you can generate a lot more work in a lot less time.
Perfect, great. And thank you for that, showing that creative example, Tom and Derek, for elaborating on the specific parts of that image optimization opportunities and options. Now, let's move on to the reserved part for questions and answers. During the session, we had a few questions, so if you don't mind, I would like to start by reading them out loud, and maybe both of you can answer. The first question is from Chris. How is the center point selected for the automated scaling? Is this a manual process, or is this also done automatically?
So I think from what I understand, if we're talking about the dynamic cropping, that's all based on the face box detection. So there's an arbitrary amount of space that can then be allocated around that face box for the cropping itself. So it really is a case of how much space do you want to crop very tightly into the face, or do you want a lot of space around it before we then add in the cropping requirements, whether it's a 2x1, 16x9, etc. So recognize the face box first, and then base all the cropping on that. So
it's something that it's a preset that you select, and then that is automatically implemented to all the images cropped.
It can be, yeah. You don't have to by any means. It's an option. So again, and a lot of the things we'll probably talk about, these are all options. They're not forced upon the image. It's not, we don't have to run AI on the images if you don't want to, if they don't need it. Then why add that extra layer to it? But it's really a case of tailoring how you want a specific output or process tailored within Claro itself. And there can be multiple different processes. It's not one size fits all. It can be super specific or fairly generic depending on the requirements. So if we're talking about specific branding colors, we can work with a specific channel just for working on brand colors. If you want to kind of step out of that and just say, oh, we just need a general toning with the dynamic cropping, that's also possible too.
There is a sub question here from Chris again. What if this is an object and not a face?
At the moment, we only work on faces, but that is right up on the top list of things that's going to be coming in the next couple of versions. Because especially when you look at, say, the pack shots, that makes a perfect example in terms of you have a pack or product, and everything else is just white space or white space behind it. How do you want to crop it? It's a very, very simple process to do. It's just really a case of getting that in place. But faces were the most important to begin with. Then we're following on from there. So yeah, the future is there's some amazing stuff, but I don't want to talk about that because it's not available just yet. So
thanks, Derek.
It's difficult.
Understandable. And there is also another question regarding this part of the image cropping. Is it possible to automatically create several images from one image? For example, if the basic image contains a table filled with different food dishes, is it possible to isolate all dishes separately in a unique image?
That's a really interesting question, and sadly the answer is no for now. But it really is, it's looking at being able to understand, and this is where we were very conscious about talking about what is available now with the AI in terms of like deliverable, whereas where it could go. What we have to get to with that is the engines then have to understand that this is a photo of a table of food, and then we want each of those dishes as a separate entity or a separate element within those images, and that has to be tagged. So once it becomes possible to do that, then for us it's very straightforward because the details will be tagged, but it's just getting the AI engines to understand, okay, this is a plate of carbonara, this is a salad, this is a bowl of tomatoes, this is whatever the case may be. So it's really having the engine being able to power that part. But once the data's there, there's no end to what we can do with it. Just as an example, in terms of data being present but not being used at the moment, a lot of the images now with the AI engines can be GPS tagged if they're landmarks, holiday photos, etc., etc. So you end up with the GPS coordinates tagged within the metadata. Now, at the moment, we don't do anything specifically with that in terms of toning, but for the metadata and for assets, etc., etc., that's a huge option in terms of showing me all the images of Trafalgar Square or the images of The Hague, for example. So lots of capabilities. I think for now, certainly from Elpical, we've scratched the surface. We've been very focused on in terms of what we need to deliver straight away, but there's a lot of lists that we want to go through in terms of what we can bring in to those images too.
Great, perfect, thank you. There's another question from John Fong. For some of our print-based clients, they need to match some of the images with specific color profiles, such as foreground 39. Can this be automated with the solution?
Absolutely, yep. Any type of ICC profile can be utilized for the outputs. So you can then tag, you can have 5 different images coming out with 5 different profiles, depending on the regionalization of where you're going to send to print. I was saying earlier that we work in 59 countries. We are on all 6 continents, so we see all the different profiles, everything from the South American to North American to Northern European, Southern European, Indian, Asia Pacific, etc., etc. So there's already a huge library of profiles already in place. If you have specific fingerprinted press profiles, that's also easy to utilize too.
Okay. Another interesting question. What are the, from Ivan, what are the possibilities for in-house integration, WoodWing and Claro? What are the advantages / disadvantages for mover and plugin? This is a bit more technical.
Yep.
So, I don't know,
Tom, do you want to?
Yeah, so typically the integration is either triggered on the status, or if you, for example, add the file to Studio, or you can already do it when it's uploaded in a certain folder, for example.
Okay. Thank you. There is one other question, or more of a demand. Hello, we would like to see live how well the face identification works. Can you optimize 2 of our pictures? Now, because this is a live session, I don't think that's possible at this moment, but maybe it will be best to have that sent across to us after the session. So maybe, I don't know, Derek, can you share your contact details, or just post them, post your email in the question box if you like to get.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Yeah, that's the perfect. That'd be a nice way of doing it. And then if you can include kind of what you're looking for as well in the images, I can give you maybe 3 or 4 different versions. But it's if you give us some idea as to what you're looking for with the image result, then we can tone specifically to that too. It's one of the great things that let me just send that. That's on chat. I don't know if everybody gets that, or Magdalena, if that's just goes to you. But yeah, one of the great things we get, hey, can you tone these images? Can you enhance them? We can do many things. We can pull the color in, we can pull the color out, we can work on specific color channels. So there's a lot that kind of that we can do with it. So yeah, please feel free. Maybe we can share the details afterwards, but yeah, feel free to send some images. We like getting images. We normally only get really bad ones to work on, because that's kind of what people want to see, is like, yeah, we get some terrible looking images, make them look better. Fair enough. But if you have any good images, feel free to send those too.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so then there was a question also from Knut about what kind of AI engines do we support. Basically, you can tie into any AI provider, but we have very good experience indeed with Google AI, AWS, and Clarify. Some of these tools have their advantages. So Google is very good in object recognition. Clarify has also models specifically tailored to celebrity detection. So there's a lot of things are possible.
Okay. I think we have, yes, I think we have more questions. Tom, can you possibly see them? Because I don't know from what reason I have a frozen panel of questions. I cannot click them individually.
Yeah, I think we answered most of the questions, if not all. Yeah, if there are any follow-up questions, please reach out to us. We're more than happy to answer them.
There's just one more. You recognize images via Google AI, right? We had
that's the one that just answered.
Oh, okay, yes. All right, great, thank you. Yeah, I think we covered everything. And I will send your details, Derek, to the person that asked for the
right.
two examples.
Perfect.
Okay. Well, again, thank you. We're almost near to the end of the reserved slot for the session, and I want to thank you both, Tom and Derek, for this very useful session and for the demonstration that you provided. I hope this is also useful for all of our attendees. And yes, feel free to send any questions if you have for us after the session. You can also use webinar@woodwing.com as an email address. And I will try to send the contact details of Derek Milne after this session with the people that were asking to get a few examples and show Claro in action. Thank you again. Wishing everybody a lovely day.
Great.
Next time.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.